Whistle followed by 3 short. Hold your ears. Hello everyone and welcome aboard the Three Rivers Queen. This is your captain Andrew Schmidt. On our cruise we'll be traveling a little bit on Pittsburgh's Three Rivers, having just departed our station Square Dock, currently traveling upstream on the Monongahela River. This Monongahela River, named by the Native Americans, means steep sliding or falling banks. If you look over on our right hand side, you'll see Station Square, home for our Gateway Clipper fleet. Wasn't always our home. We actually got our start on the left hand side across the river at the Monongahela Wharf back in 1958. And at that time we only had one vessel. We had the original Gateway Clipper, held 150 passengers. And today we have 5 vessels in our fleet. We have the Countess, the Duchess, the Empress, the Princess, and the Three Rivers Queen. Can hold a total capacity of just about 2,000 passengers. Now we use every bit of that whenever we shuttle people over to Heinz Field for the University of Pittsburgh Panthers, Pittsburgh Steelers football games, and the PNC Park for the Pittsburgh Pirate games. Well, at this time, we're going to go ahead and turn the microphone over to your tour guide. So, here's Joanna.
Thank you, Captain Andy, and welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning on this beautiful Pittsburgh morning. Let's cross our fingers that the sun stays out It is Pittsburgh, though, so we know to expect anything when it comes to the weather. Now, I've got a ton to tell you, so I'm going to jump right into things, but hold on to your questions. I will be available. The boat is passing under Pittsburgh's oldest bridge. This here is the Smithfield Street Bridge, at over 130 years old. It's also the third bridge to rest in the exact same spot. The first two bridges were obviously not so fortunate. One of the previous bridges wasted away. The other one was lost in Pittsburgh's Great Fire of the 1800s. Now, how the Great Fire of 1845 happened was a woman was just doing her laundry over the open flame, as you are wont to do, and she stepped away for just a moment. But the wind was so strong that day, the fire spread, and a third of Pittsburgh burned to the ground in one day, including claiming one of those bridges. Well, then they built the Smithfield Street Bridge and named it a historic landmark. So now, not even the color of the paint can be changed. You'll notice that most of the bridges we see on our tour this morning are painted yellow. Well, it's actually a law in downtown Pittsburgh that all non-government-owned bridges have to be painted yellow in order to represent the golden triangle of downtown Pittsburgh. The only exception to that rule is our Smithfield Street Bridge. An example of a government-owned bridge, if you look to your right as we go forward, this black bridge here is what we call the T-Bridge. It's officially named the Panhandle Bridge, but we call it the T-Bridge because it provides a cross over the river for our teeny tiny subway system that we call the T. It only services a fraction of our communities here in Pittsburgh, although it is free to ride in downtown, and it'll drop you off by our stadium so you can avoid the incredible parking debacle during any one of our games. The bridge just beyond it to your right is a nightmare of construction, 365 days a year, 24/7. Ironically enough, our second highest traffic bridge, the Liberty Bridge. Also the bane of my existence, as that's the bridge separating my house from downtown. So I am just a little bit bitter about the Liberty Bridge. Now, this PNC building on your right was one of the first green or environmentally friendly buildings to pop up here in Pittsburgh. I am very happy to report to you folks that we have several more green buildings, and I'll be able to point out a few of them. But this was one of the first to start that trend. The tan building to your right with Huntington on the side is the Grant building, and believe it or not, folks, it's actually a certified lighthouse because of that little structure sitting up on top. That's an aviation beacon. Now, it's not really called into action much these days, but at night, that beacon lights up with green light pulses that spell out Pittsburgh in Morse code. It's one of my favorite local facts. This oddly shaped cluster of silver skyscrapers to your right is the Oxford Center. Now, I know it looks like one big weirdly shaped building, but there are actually 4 individual skyscrapers, each in an octagon shape very close together. Now, the reason why the designer did that is actually quite silly. You probably wouldn't guess it. He wanted as many corner offices as possible. So he built 4 8-sided buildings and then smushed them all together so they don't even all have a good view. I am told, because I would not know personally as a starving artist, that you can buy anything from a Rolls-Royce luxury car to a Rolex watch to a really good bagel right there in the Oxford Center. On your right, underneath this roadway here, behind this line of trees, is a parking lot. That is the Mon Wharf parking garage, and it's the cheapest parking in downtown Pittsburgh. Anyone have a wild guess as to why it's the cheapest? Go ahead and shout it out. It floods all the time. That is right, folks. It is known for going underwater. They actually issue a warning that if you decide to park there, they are not responsible if you return to find your car sleeping with the fishes. I returned once to find my own car halfway underwater before I was able to get myself out of there. And those metal bars were installed because sometimes cars would actually float out into the river. Now, if you're looking for cheap parking and you have triple checked the weather report, keep the Mon Wharf parking garage in mind. Just over top of that to our right, the buildings facing us have been restored to look as they did over 100 years ago, and that area is called Pittsburgh's First Side. But if you look all the way at the back of the skyline to your right to see that glass skyscraper with a very sloped black top, that's a really exciting building here in Pittsburgh. That's our newest skyscraper. It's about 2 years old, and it, up until last year, was the greenest building in the world. It costs as much to run that entire skyscraper in electricity as 2 households would here in Pittsburgh. Unbelievable, right? That slope top is a massive solar panel. It leaves a 0 carbon monoxide imprint, and that's the tower at PNC Plaza. This glass castle looking skyscraper to your right is PPG Place. PPG stands for Pittsburgh Plate Glass, and they are beautifully displaying their product as the entire structure, which includes 6 separate buildings, are all made out of Pittsburgh plate glass. The reason why it looks like a castle is because it was modeled to look like English Parliament. Also what I think to be our most pretty building downtown. Now on the right-hand river's edge, and matching it on the other side of the river, these 2 big hunks of old worn stone are the Wabash Bridge Piers. They stand as a memorial to the Wabash Bridge, and they are historic landmarks, so they cannot be destroyed. However, they did go up for sale a couple of years ago for a couple of $1 million each. Now, I don't know what you do with bridge piers that you can't change, so we've been collecting ideas, and the best idea we've gotten so far is the City of Pittsburgh should put a zip line going across the river. What do you guys think? All right, we'll keep bugging the City of Pittsburgh and see if we can make it happen. On your left-hand side, you will see our newest stadium. The Highmark Stadium is about 5 years old now. I was doing tours on the river when this was just a gravel parking lot, and I got to see it rise before my eyes. Now, the word Hounds is written in the seats. Does anyone know what Hounds is short for? Who are the River Hounds? Our soccer team. That's right, folks. We have a semi-professional soccer team, the River Hounds, and Highmark Stadium was built for and dedicated to them. Now, I know it doesn't go over well in a football town, but soccer is my favorite sport, so I was really excited when this happened. It also provides a home for t-ball tournaments, concerts, other events like that. Also provided a home for our female football team, the Lady Passion, for a while. If you guys didn't know, we also have a female football team. They now play in the stadium down the road behind us. Now, the bridge we're approaching, folks, is rather infamous here in Pittsburgh. This is the Fort Pitt Bridge. It's a double-decker bowstring construction bridge, but no one knows it for its impressive design. We all know it for its horrific traffic patterns. This here is our highest traffic bridge in Pittsburgh, and if you have to cross it, you will be forced to cross 4 lanes of traffic in only 300 feet, while everyone else is trying to do the same thing. It's awful. Everyone you saw on the bridge right now, miserable, I can guarantee it. However, there is one upside. Coming out of the tunnel on your left onto the bridge provides such an amazing view of our downtown Pittsburgh. It's even been used in several Hollywood films. So spectacular is the view of our downtown that this has been named Pittsburgh's front door. So it's only appropriate then that the front door leads you to a front yard. And on your right, you'll see our beautiful Point State Park. This is 36 acres of dedicated parkland, also a historic landmark. You can imagine that the confluence of 3 rivers would be a very strategic location. Well, it certainly was. And this is where the British and the French fought for claim over the Pittsburgh area. Now it's host to several events throughout the year. We just had the 3 Rivers Arts Festival here at Point State Park. We've got the Rivers Regatta coming up later this summer, where there will be more activity in the point and boat races on the river. And we've got the Polar Bear Plunge happening at the point every winter. So if jumping into frigid waters to raise money for charity sounds like fun to you, you are a braver soul than I am. That is the Polar Bear Plunge. It is for a good cause, and that happens in the dead of winter every year right here at the point. Now we have a beautiful view of the crown jewel of Pittsburgh, our gorgeous fountain at the point. It recently underwent a $7 million renovation. So it now has an internal LED light display, it's computer operated, and there are wind sensors which control the height of that middle geyser, which can go up to 150 feet in the air to make sure that the water comes down only in those water basins below. Now, before the wind sensors worked, if you guys look to your right and all the way across the park to see the Wyndham Hotel, it used to get spray on its windows all the time from this fountain right here. Just another example of our crazy Pittsburgh wind. You can see the wind is not very strong today as the geyser is quite high. But if you feel a gust, you can actually watch the fountain go up and down before your eyes. Now we're at the confluence of the three rivers, and I'm hoping that Captain Andy can tell you guys a little bit more about where we are right now.
At Monongahela River behind us. Monongahela River, 128.7 miles in length, starts in Fairmont, West Virginia, travels almost due north to the point in Pittsburgh. They're making a right-hand turn here, leaving the Monongahela River behind. Next, we'll be traveling upstream on the Allegheny River. And the Allegheny River, also named by the Native Americans, means fair or beautiful waters. And the Allegheny River, 325 miles in length, starts in Potter County, Pennsylvania, flows up into Olean, New York, and back down to the point in Pittsburgh. But the Allegheny River, it's only navigable for 72 miles to East Brady, PA. And by the word navigable, it is meant that the Army Corps of Engineers will guarantee us 9 feet of water. All they guarantee is 9 feet. Average depth in the pool here in Pittsburgh is about 20 feet. While we're sailing on, it's about 16, 17 feet deep right here. Monongahela River off to our right, Allegheny out ahead of us, flowed to the point to form the Ohio. And the Ohio River starts at the point, flows behind us 981 miles to Cairo, Illinois, where it meets the mighty Mississippi. Now if we head down the Ohio River, make a left on the Mississippi, travel another 900 miles, we'll find ourselves in New Orleans. Now the point at Pittsburgh is mile 0 for all three other rivers. It's mile 0 and it counts up as it goes up the Allegheny and the Monongahela River. It counts up as it goes down the Ohio River. Up ahead of us on our left and right hand side, up ahead of us on the right, you'll see some red buoys. Up ahead of us on the left, you'll see some green buoys. Now the saying goes, right red returning from sea. So heading upriver, returning from sea, keep the red buoys on the right. Okay, back to you, Joanna.
Thank you, Captain Andy. Now, folks, there is so much to see going up this stretch of the river. I want to warn you, I'm going to be bouncing back and forth a lot. So, 1, I will try to be clear about where I'm talking about, and 2, I will do my best not to give you whiplash. I am also not ignoring the stadium that we just passed on the left. Don't worry, we're going to talk about that when we get even closer on the return trip. But if you look at that renovated bridge pier in front of the stadium we're not talking about yet, there's a statue of a man tying his shoe. Does anyone know who that wonderful man is? That's right, that is our Fred Rogers Memorial statue, as Mr. Rogers was from the greater Pittsburgh area. Now, that wonderful man was even more wonderful because he did not want to be memorialized as an individual, so the name of that statue is A Tribute to Children. That's my favorite landmark in all of Pittsburgh. Now, the area beside the stadium to your left is where our beloved Three Rivers Stadium used to reside. It now holds our newest concert venue, that's Stage AE. It's an in and outdoor concert venue, one of the only types like that in the country. If you have the opportunity to see a concert there, I would highly recommend it. It is both spacious and intimate at the same time. In front of Stage AE to your left, that metallic circular structure is our World War II memorial. We have several war memorials going up the Allegheny River. Before I get to the next one, the bottom corner of the People's Building is where the Bettis Grill resides, owned and operated, even patronized by Jerome Bettis, the bus himself. Now, they've got a deep-fried cheeseburger and a deep-fried hoagie that are to die for. Now, depending on your heart condition, yes, that could be true. But the Bettis Grill is delicious, and you should definitely check out their menu. In front of the People's Building to your left, this brown metallic structure on the riverfront is our Vietnam Veterans Monument. It's built in the shape of an inverted lotus flower, which is the Asian symbol for peace, and underneath it there are statues of soldiers coming home to their families. The structure was lined with chimes, and it was said that every time the chimes ring in the wind, prayers go out to the families of our fallen soldiers. Now the bridge coming up is the Fort Duquesne Bridge, but because of a very silly incident that happened here back in the 70s, locals called this the Bridge to Nowhere. That's because when the bridge was built, the highway leading from it wasn't for years. It just dropped off into nothing and sat that way. Now everybody knew about this, and of course there were roadblocks and signs, but still, a University of Pittsburgh college student managed to accidentally drive his father's station wagon right off the end of the bridge. He landed upside down in the shallow waters, incredibly unharmed. However, his embarrassing moment got so much press in Pittsburgh that DJs on their morning radio show made a fake contest out of who could get the most distance driving off the end of the bridge. There were t-shirts and bumper stickers circulating saying, "I survived the Great Bridge Leap," and now that young man's embarrassing story lives on. On your left, you will see water cascading over stone steps. Now, there's no one playing on them right now, but this is a unique public fountain where you, your parents, your children, your pets are all encouraged to play. The water is treated just like a swimming pool, and especially on one of our many muggy Pittsburgh days, it's an amazing place to visit. Not just for the kids. I've spent many an afternoon there myself. In the grove of trees to your left, beside the water steps, that is where our Korean War Veterans Memorial is, and there's a beautiful parklet that you can wander through in order to further appreciate that. On your right-hand side, this cluster of traditionally shaped silver skyscrapers is our Gateway Center. It's known for being home to KDKA TV2 and KDKA 1020 Radio, the first commercially broadcasting radio station in the world. Now, my favorite story about a building in downtown is about the skyscraper on your right with a giant needle coming out of the top of it. That needle structure is 13 stories high all on its own, and the designer spring-mounted it so it was able to flex up to 3 feet in any direction depending on windy conditions. That sounds like a great idea, but he forgot to tell anyone he did that. So the first windy day, they evacuated 3 city blocks because they thought it was going to come crashing down and destroy downtown Pittsburgh. That's why it's my favorite story, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is 5th Avenue Place. Your locals will also know that Highmark is a medical insurance company, and people have speculated that building looks like a giant hypodermic needle. I'll just leave you with that thought. On your left-hand side, you will see our spectacular PNC Park, voted by ESPN as the best place in the world to watch a baseball game. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that, but the biggest reason is that this is one of the smallest professional stadiums in the world, and it's built so that there's not one bad seat in the house. The seat as far away as you could possibly get is a mere 88 feet from the action, making for an incredible and intimate baseball experience. Now, speaking of baseball, this bridge coming up here is our Roberto Clemente Bridge, after our late great right fielder, Roberto Clemente. Now, as we get nice and close, can you guys see the padlocks all along the side of the bridge here? It's a tradition that we have in Pittsburgh that couples wanting to commemorate their relationship will put a padlock on the bridge and then throw the key into the river. I myself have a padlock with the love of my life on the Clemente Bridge. We put it there before he went on deployment in the Middle East, and he just got back safely. That's actually a tradition that Pittsburgh borrowed from Paris, but a funny story about the first bridge that happened to in Paris, it collapsed under the weight of all of the logs. Not a safety hazard here in Pittsburgh, just a romantic tradition. Now, this building on your right-hand side with a giant hole through the middle is the Renaissance Hotel. It was designed as an office building long before air conditioning, and what that structure allowed for was every single office within the building to have a window for air circulation. So not just a beautiful design, but an ingenious one as well. Now, you may have noticed that the Clemente Bridge and the next 2 bridges coming up look rather similar. Well, when they were first built, they were identical, which is why we call them our sister bridges. The Clemente Bridge has ice blue lights that come on at night to match the ice blue lights at PNC Park. And you can see what the bridge looks like when it's brand new, as the Andy Warhol just had his face lifted last year. Each of our bridges are under a schedule for their renovations. This is what the yellow paint looks like before it's sun-bleached and wind-burned. Now, Andy Warhol was from Pittsburgh, even though he had his famous life in New York City. So we named the bridge after him. We've got the Andy Warhol Museum, which is at the end of this bridge to your left. And Andy did come home to rest here in Pittsburgh, and there's even an art installation surrounding his gravesite. Now, this building on your left is one of my favorites due to its incredible design. Now, I know it's stunning to look at, but there's even more than meets the eye. This is the Alcoa building. That company manufactures aluminum, and they designed this entire building without a single traditional wall. It's all aluminum and glass. So the engineering that went into designing that is just spectacular. You can see our third and final sister bridge. She's getting her face lifted right now. This is the Rachel Carson Bridge. Now, Rachel Carson was a famous environmentalist from the suburbs of Pittsburgh, and it was her book, Silent Spring, which talked about her research into DDT, a very harmful pesticide. It was Rachel's research that got it banned from the United States. You can also see how light that color yellow gets when it's really beaten up by Pittsburgh weather. On your right-hand side, you have a lovely view of our tallest skyscraper with UPMC on the side. That is our U.S. Steel Tower. Now, folks, you could probably see the rust on the outside of that building from here, but don't worry, that was actually on purpose. The whole thing is built out of a type of steel called Core 10, which was supposed to rust on the outside while protecting the steel on the inside. Now, what the engineers didn't think about at the time, though, was the acid rain here in Pittsburgh. So instead of rusting slowly, that massive skyscraper rusted almost instantly, covering the plaza below, which had to be replaced, and many of its workers, too, in bright red rust. They had to create tunnels and overhangs for workers to actually get into the building and avoid all kinds of lawsuits at the time. And if you were walking around downtown Pittsburgh then, you'd come away with a bright orange ring around your collar. Directly to our right, spanning 3 city blocks on the riverfront here, is the David L. Lawrence Convention Center. It's the second one of the same name to rest in the exact same spot, only its predecessor was only 1 city block long and not environmentally friendly. This one, as I said, spans 3, and it's one of the largest green buildings in the world. It's also one of our more unique, which is saying something. The city takes on an entirely new personality at night with all the lights coming on. And one of the more unique light displays I heard of is sometimes when you're going over the bridge, you can see there are ice blue lights going over the top of the convention center. I learned that those are projected quotes from children's stories. One of the sweetest things I'd ever heard. Now, this bridge coming up is the Fort Wayne Railroad Bridge. Notice the very different color stones that the bridge is resting on. It used to rest on those gray stones down below, but after the lock and dam systems were put in place, the rivers rose and the bridge was too low to get boats underneath it, so it was raised to this level. Now, that doesn't sound too special, but wait. They kept 4 lanes of railroad traffic running at the same time while that bridge was hoisted up mid-air by cranes. I have no idea how they did that without an accident. When a train passes over it right now, you can see the bottom of the train. It's that skeletal, let alone the idea of 4 going at the same time mid-air by cranes. I was told that you just didn't mess with the Pennsylvania Railroad at the time, and they pretty much just did whatever they wanted to do, however crazy it was. Now, the area of town off to our right-hand side is our historic strip district. That name comes from one of our industry processes in the steelmaking days, as this was the site of many of our factories: glass, steel, coffee even, aluminum. But now it is home to international and ethnic markets, family-owned businesses and restaurants, outdoor vendors selling everything from handmade soaps and clothing to fresh-cut flowers, fruits, and vegetables. The best breakfast in Pittsburgh. Not my opinion, it's actually advertised that way, right here in the Strip. There is a store dedicated to wine, another one to cheese, unique wares you won't find anywhere else in the city, the best variety and quality of international food by far, the freshest seafood you can get, every kind of pasta you can imagine. I'll just trail off there. It's an amazing place to visit. Now, I would recommend you folks spend an entire day in the Strip District. You still won't manage to see or taste everything. Although I will warn you, Saturdays and Sundays get crazy. It is totally worth going to see there, but be prepared to fight everyone for a parking spot and cut your way through massive amounts of people also enjoying the spectacular wares of the Strip District. Now we're going to be turning here in just a moment. I wonder if we're going to be turning here in just a moment. Now, the bridge directly in front of us is obviously not our most attractive bridge. This is the Veterans Bridge, although it does boast leading to one of the country's shortest interstates. Those of you from Pittsburgh know which one that is. That would be 579. If you sneeze, you've missed the entire thing. It is a whopping 1.5 miles long. But as we turn, I want you folks to take a look at the bridge just beyond it, which is literally a work of art. You guys will have a beautiful view as we do complete the turn there. That is our 16th Street Bridge. As I said, literally a work of art, as an arts council had to approve the design before it was able to be built. We have several unique and beautiful buildings and bridges, but the 16th Street Bridge that you'll be, all right, we're turning right now. You'll be able to see a beautiful view of it in just a moment. And I've got a final story to tell you about the 16th Street Bridge before we take our break. Now, as we turn, you can see that the statues on the right-hand side of the 16th Street Bridge are brown, and on the left-hand side, they are a bright, vibrant copper green. Well, the artist wanted those statues to tarnish to that lovely green color that you'll see on the left-hand side. But a well-meaning maintenance man decided to clean and coat the statues on the right-hand side before someone stopped him. So now you folks have the inside scoop of why those statues are two very different colors. At this time, folks, we are going to take our break. Make sure that you visit the snack bar on the bottom deck serving refreshments, snacks, and adult beverages. She will take excellent care of you. I will rejoin you up here on the top deck at the stadium we haven't talked about yet, and I'll see you guys in just a few minutes. Our famed Heinz Field is so small. It was also built with a purpose in mind, and that purpose was to sell out. In fact, there is now an 18-year waiting list in order to buy a season seat at Heinz Field. 18 years. So if you've been waiting for a rainy day, we've got tons of those here in Pittsburgh, but you've still got almost 2 decades left to wait for a season seat. Now here's a fun fact. If you're ever wondering how much money changed hands in order for Heinz to put their name on our field, look no further than the number on the bottle. Heinz, $57 million. Not a coincidence, an obvious homage to the Heinz Company. Now, on your right is this remarkable institution, the Carnegie Science Center. Not just for kids, it's an amusement park for the mind, dedicated to all types of sciences. What looks to be a flower on top is an actual working weather vane. They've got a monster-sized theater screen. They've got water play exhibits, an entire wing dedicated just to sports sciences, where there are rock climbing walls and zip lines. The most famous and largest exhibit, though, is sitting in the water to your right. Your eyes do not deceive you. That is an actual World War II diesel Tench-class submarine, the USS Raquin, and it's available for tour with the price of admission to the Science Center. Now, it holds the world record for the longest underwater dive performed by a diesel Tench-class. 85 days underwater with a full crew of 88 men without surfacing for any reason. During that time, the crew was allowed to take 90-second showers with salt water once a week. The only person who was allowed to take a 90-second shower with fresh water every day was the cook. Now, folks, as we do this turn here, I don't want you to miss the best picture opportunity of the entire tour. Take a look at that gorgeous city. I'm going to stop talking for a moment so you can jump up and grab some pictures. I'll be right back. Thank you for that lovely pause here, Captain Andy. As I said, that was by far the best picture opportunity on the tour, but this is the best perspective to see our beautiful city. It's the only way that you get all three of the rivers, a beautiful view of the skyline, several bridges, and the point fountain right in the middle. It's just picture perfect. Captain Andy was saying that the currents are especially hard today. So he was like, I'm not sure how long I'll be able to pause. He and I always like to pause here so people can get some good pictures. So we fought the currents for picture opportunities. Now, wrapping up about the Raquin, as I said, that submarine is available for tour with the price of admission to the Science Center. If any of you struggle with claustrophobia, though, leave the tour to other people, as that tour is quite cramped. Although, one of the serving crew members on the Raquin is now a tour guide at the Science Center, so he will tell you everything that happened on board, right down to the poker games. So, keep an eye out for him there. Now, on your right-hand side, this overgrown hill is actually technically a mountain. Now, Pittsburgh is lousy with its mountainous and hilly terrain, and it has challenged our lives in several ways. One of the ways that we are challenged is with our weather patterns. Something about the rivers and the mountains has given us an anomaly. We've got a saying here: if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. It's erratic, unpredictable, and doesn't really make much sense, and literally turns on a dime. Now, our winters are no picnic either, and I'm not just talking about driving ice-covered hills. We recently had 2 polar vortexes 2 winters in a row where our temperatures dropped lower than the North Pole. If you're wondering what that was like, it was terrible, but we survived it. Our summers have also been compared to southern swamp summers. the raging humidity from the rivers being trapped in by the mountains. I've had Southerners take my tour very confused why it's swamp weather in the middle of Pennsylvania. Now, another way that we are challenged is with our architecture. I don't think there's one flat spot in all the city of Pittsburgh, so we've had to get really creative with our building. A perfect example is this office building to your right. It's a very typical office building, but they were challenged with being sandwiched between a river, two sets of railroad tracks, a main roadway, and a mountain. There was nowhere to put a parking lot, so they made their roof a parking lot. You'll find creative approaches, as I said, all over the city of Pittsburgh. In fact, there are areas of town where there have been houses packed so tightly onto mountainsides so steep, they had to build staircases in order to access their own homes and businesses. Truly bizarre. If you folks are in Pittsburgh and want a fun little side field trip, take a gander through the south side slopes. It's an area of town up against this mountain, but all the way at the other end of it. They had to commission special ambulances in order to navigate those bizarre and narrow streets. Sometimes there are houses and streets set into the such steep hillsides, the street is literally split in half, going one way and another way. But this field trip should be taken under a few very stern conditions. Daylight, good weather, and don't listen to Google. Google still recognizes those staircases as being legal streets, so make sure you look first before turning right down a staircase. Now, another way that we are challenged here that all of us have experienced, and I'm sorry, is our traffic patterns and roadways. To the extent that Frank Lloyd Wright was even consulted to fix those issues. But he took one look at our road maps and said, no, destroy everything and start from scratch. So if you if you have learned to drive here in Pittsburgh, don't worry. After navigating these bizarre streets, you can navigate your way anywhere. You will see street signs and directions you won't see anywhere else in the world. It's truly bizarre. Now, Mount Washington in particular is one of our biggest attractions now, but during the height of our industry, this beautiful mountain was an eyesore that locals called Coal Hill. Instead of having lush vegetation, it was a big bald black rock, and it was covered in inclines only related to the industry. Those inclines carried our mill workers and supplies up and down the mountain. As you can see, the mountain has grown in again, and we only have 2 inclines left in Pittsburgh, which have nothing to do with industry anymore, but for anyone wanting a lift up or down the mountain with a stunning city view. The first one is to our right. This is the Duquesne Incline, owned and operated by a historic society. Senior citizens can ride for free. And at the top of the Duquesne Incline, you'll find several of Pittsburgh's finest 4-star restaurants overlooking the point. The view over dinner is genuinely stunning, just jaw-dropping. The second incline in Pittsburgh is the Monongahela Incline, and that goes up the mountain right behind Station Square where we left Doc. At the top of that incline, you'll find our most famous overlooks going along the ridge of the mountain, along with a lovely little business district that has the city's best soft serve ice cream, pubs, restaurants, and a Pittsburgh gift shop with wares made only by Pittsburgh artisans. They've got everything from pierogi Christmas ornaments to mugs, posters, and handmade soaps. Now, the views from Mount Washington were voted by USA Today as having the best city view in the world. But that view was not always possible. My mother grew up here during the height of the industry, and she's told me stories how you weren't able to see downtown Pittsburgh from the top of this mountain. That's how polluted our air was. A man couldn't walk from his house to his car without a white shirt turning gray, and an inch of dust would collect on her windowsill every day. As you can see, we have entirely and thankfully transformed. Our air is clear no matter how cloudy it gets here in Pittsburgh. The rivers are clean enough to fish and eat out of again. We've got over 300 species of fish back in our rivers, something I couldn't even have imagined even 10 years ago. There was a bird that came back to Pittsburgh of its own volition that is very sensitive to the environment, and one of our captains almost burst into tears because he said that was such an indicator of the incredible environment we've got back here in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's biggest industries now are our colleges and our hospitals. To go from industry to medicine and education is an inspiring transformation. And I know Pittsburgh is a sports town, we always will be, but you might not know we are also a thriving arts town. We've got more live theater happening in the small city of Pittsburgh than any other city in the country aside from New York City. And Hollywood's been bringing us tons of TV shows and movies because of our tax break, but also our unique architecture makes us look like any of the decades throughout the last century, and our unique terrain makes us look like any number of cities throughout the country. We've got the most bridges of any city in the entire world, even Venice. We top them all at 446 main working bridges. I know that number does not include government-owned railway bridges or footbridges. 446. Now, Pittsburgh was also voted the best livable city in the world several years in a row, and I hope on this beautiful Pittsburgh morning you have just a tiny idea of why we love this city so much. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joanna. It's been my pleasure to be your tour guide on this beautiful morning. If you have any questions for me, or if you enjoyed this tour and you'd like to let me know, I do accept gratitude in all forms, and I would love to hear from you folks. I will be waiting on the dock to say goodbye to you in person as you step off the boat or answer any questions you may have. Also, any kids riding aboard, if you make your way to the souvenir shop on the dock where the cafe is, they can pick out a free toy from Captain Jack's treasure trove. So make sure they stop by, and you adults can grab yourself a coffee while they're doing that. Thank you so much for joining us on the Clipper, and I definitely hope to see you folks again soon. Take care.